I'm getting ready to sew the flying geese for block D, and this would be an instance in which I'd want to remove the seam guide from this 97 dual feed foot. And that's because I'm going to be sewing right along the line, and I'm not going to trim the seam allowance until afterwards, so the seam guide would actually get in the way. So I wanted to show you how I do this. Now, when I sew right along this line, I actually want to be a hairline more. I'm going to show you with my golden scissors that actually ship with the machine. I want to be a hairline more toward the outside corner here. And I want to be a hairline over from that diagonal line because I want to account for the fabric thickness. So when I press this open, that corner doesn't become just a little too short. So I can ensure that this doesn't happen by stitching just one hairline over towards the corner from that diagonal line. So I'm going to make sure I'm lined up right. And then I'm going to feed this through. Now, I like to slip it under right as I get to the edge of this fabric. I just lift up my presser foot just a little bit. So can you see I'm just like one needle's width over. And that's how I would sew my flying geese, all of them. It would be one needle width over. So let me set this up again and continue on. Okay, just as with other types of blocks, with the flying geese, I'm going to chain piece as well. So I'm going to line up my next square here. And I'm going to sew right along the diagonal line toward the outside of the block. Once I've sewn these pieces, I'm then going to take my scissors and just trim about 1/4 inch away from my stitch line. You can also use a rotary cutter for this step. It's just so quick to use scissors that that's what I usually do. So now my block looks like this. I'm ready to sew the other side of my flying geese, so I'm going to go ahead and place the dark square right on top of my first unit like this. And then I'm going to feed it through the machine. Now I find it's easier to feed it into the machine when you're not feeding a point into the machine. That's usually when I might have trouble maneuvering my fabric. So what I prefer to do is actually feed it into the machine like this. So I'm going to lift up my presser foot just a little bit. If you like to stitch with the hover, your presser foot may be lifted for you. When you stop. Okay, so now take the last one like this. I have another one to feed through. So again, I don't like feeding the point through unless I have to feed it through. So instead, I'm actually going to feed this piece through like this. And I'm going to continue on until I've made all the flying geese for block D of the BERNINA 125th anniversary quilt. Tip for joining a flying goose to another piece of fabric. So here I've already joined one here, and you'll notice that I didn't clip off my point. So I don't know if you can see that, but I ensured that my point, it comes right up to this piece, but it doesn't get chopped off. So the way I do that when I sew is, if I can, I make sure that the flying goose is the top unit that I'm joining rather than the bottom unit. So I'm not sewing from this side because I can't see the point on this side. I'm instead sewing from this side. So I go ahead and I line up my fabrics and I feed in the goose. And as I come, get my stiletto out, as I come to this point, I make sure that I don't chop it off. So I make sure that the needle, sorry, I just bumped the little tripod stand. I even use my stiletto, but I make sure that the needle comes right to that point, but doesn't go past it, because that would chop off my point, and I don't want that. Okay. I'm going to continue chain piecing until I've completed my block.